The death of El Perris has a lot of people asking very important questions. And the one that I would really like to focus on for this video is, why does it appear that the Mexican federal government always goes after Los Chapitos much more so than Los Mallitos Flacos? And I think the answer is pretty clear. Since the start of the Civil War, the Mexican federal government has picked a side, and they are supporting the Mallitos Flacos and going directly after Los Chapitos for two main reasons, although there's probably a lot. But the two main ones I want to focus on is, number one, Los Chapitos turned over Mayo Zambada to the United States without the knowledge of the federal government. If there's one man who knows all the corrupt dealings in Mexico, it's Mayo Zambada. And the Chapitos gave him to the US without the knowledge of the Mexican federal government. And they're probably very concerned that Mayo Zambada will now say in front of the world and in court proceedings all the corrupt dealings that the Mexican federal government has. But number two, and probably more importantly, the Mexican federal government is just done with the violence that is impacting Sinaloa. And in their mind, they made a calculated decision that if we get rid of Los Chapitos, the Civil War is over and Sinaloa can finally have some peace, even though Mallito Flaco would control Sinaloa. But from the Mexican federal perspective, that's an acceptable trade-off to end the violence. Better have one cartel control the state than two fighting for it and affecting the civilian population. And since the Civil War started, that's what we've seen. The Mexican federal government mostly targeting key leaders, operatives, and infrastructure of Los Chapitos, much more so than the Mallito Flacos. And that's going to continue. The death of El Perris just tells us that from the federal government perspective, they do not care about the Chapito and CG&G alliance. That does not change the calculations that the federal government has made. The introduction of Jalisco New Generation personnel into Sinaloa, which on my Twitter page I've actually released one of what looks like the first video showing Chapito and Jalisco New Generation operating together in Rosarito, Sinaloa, that hasn't changed the calculations of the Mexican federal government. And if anything, it might indicate that the federal government might double or triple down on this approach because of the concern of Jalisco Generation operating in Sinaloa will only cause the violence to continue and, if anything, escalate. And so I think the federal government, from the Mexican point of view, will just focus on Los Chapitos. And so the areas that I would be looking at is seeing what other leaders are next in the Chapito leadership infrastructure to go after, with obviously the top one, the king of the king, and the highest priority probably for the Mexican federal government being Ivan Archibaldo. Because the downfall of Ivan Archibaldo would basically be a death sentence for Los Chapitos. And maybe from the Mexican federal government perspective, his fall might finally end the civil war in Sinaloa. That might be wishful thinking, but clearly all evidence and all reporting we had since the Civil War started shows that the Mexican federal government is going that route, and they want the Chapitos done.